Laura A. Grace here, and I am a manga creator, but I'm not an illustrator. Welcome back to my manga making video series. I hope that you loved all of the special guests that I featured or interviewed in the month of February. It was so incredible, guys. I feel like I just personally learned so much, and I was really encouraged. It made me want to dive into my current manga that I'm working on and I'm writing. It made me want to even attempt and try to storyboard and just not panic about it being absolute perfection the first time around. Like, I was just so encouraged by that personally, and I hope that you were too. Definitely go back and check them out if you haven't seen them. They are just so awesome, and it starts basically from the time you're script writing all the way to publication. For the month of March, I had thought about focusing on purely my story of working with my illustrator, how I found her, the finances, things that you need before you, I feel like, move forward in the illustrating process. But then the other day, I realized that I have not shared why I'm self-publishing my manga. Now, I totally understand that sometimes when we hear that word, especially as readers, when we hear that word self-publish, we sort of like internally cringe. I know that for sure I used to be that kind of person or that reader, I should say, that when I heard that authors were self-publishing their book, I was like, they are not a real author. They are less because they are publishing it. Like, why would you not go with their traditional publisher? That was not correct thinking. That is disrespectful, I realized, to all those who indie publish and self-publish. That is not to say that there are people who self-publish their book and maybe should not have, due to maybe the editing being very, very poor or the cover art just not being that good. You guys know what I mean. You've probably seen it online on Amazon. That's not to say that meanly or rudely to them, but the writers that I am surrounded by that have pursued indie publishing or self-publish their books do top-notch work. I mean, we're talking about they go to the same lengths as a traditionally published author would to make their books be the very best that they can. Now, I don't remember when I immersed myself around self-published authors or anything like that, but I can say that I know that the book that was a huge turning point for me that really made me rethink about my views towards self-publishing was when I read Heart Song by Desiree Williams. I love this series. It's actually unavailable now. The author took it down, but I have all 3 books. I've read them all at least 3 times. I might have read this one 4 times because I know I read books 1 and 2 before the 3rd one released. But I read this and I was just like, this is amazing. Like, this is the work of a self-published author. Like, I am missing out. And so I dove into her series. I dove into her other books, and it actually led me to seeking out self-published books. I remember at that time I really wasn't writing, so I just felt like I was intentionally going on Amazon and purposely looking for these indie books that were not by the publishers that I had been reading, because at that time I was a book blogger for a few different Christian fiction publishers, and that is much of where the books that I was getting were coming from. But then, like I said, enter these self-published books, and they were cheaper, they were more affordable, but I was finding that they had really unique views, isn't the right word. I don't know what the right word would be, but just an interesting concept that I felt like was very different from, like I said, the traditionally published books I was reading. They had different tropes. They didn't follow those cliches and those tropes that I was familiar with. And I was like, well, man, I sort of want to know more about this. And that sort of entered my journey into becoming a blog tour coordinator for a few indie publishers, for a variety of self-published authors, as well as a few award-winning authors that were traditionally published. Now, I do want to say that there is no wrong way to publish your manga or to even publish a book. I'm not going to go into the pros and cons of indie publishing or traditionally publishing. You can go on Google and you can just Google simply that, the pros and cons of self-publishing, and find a variety of results. You could also go into writers groups and ask the same thing, and you will get a lot of different opinions and a lot of different feedback. These are just my personal opinions of why I personally wanted to self-publish my manga. Now, I don't really know what the biggest reason is. Probably one of them, I sort of felt maybe I was forced, not really, but it felt that I was forced into self-publishing because I write Christian manga, and I do not know of any publishers that are actually publishing Christian manga. I know there is, I think it's the Manga Messiah, that is a Christian series. I think it though is purely based on biblical stories and doesn't take liberties with the biblical stories. It just puts it in a manga perspective or told from a manga writing style. I actually don't know. I've never personally read it. I know that Zondervan has I Was a 8th Grade Ninja. I have not read that. I don't currently own that anymore. And the only other one that I know that I felt like where manga and graphic novel were used interchangeably, we definitely know, guys, that they are different. But I'm just saying that at that time that I felt they were used interchangeably was from, I think it's Real Buzz Studio or Buzz Studio, and they created or they published a series of graphic novels that had a manga-like style but were in colored form, and that was Serenity. That was the first series I read that made me think like, wow, like there are Christian graphic novels and I absolutely love this. And they had also published a few other series. That company is no longer around either. So I was not willing to change my point of view of writing anything but Christian manga that is distinctly and purely what I wanted. I just want a faith-based story. So that alone, I felt like self-publishing was my only option because there were no publishers that I could try and pitch to see if they would offer a contract or anything like that. But also, hand in hand with that, I wanted absolute control of my book. I wanted no publisher telling me what I could or could not do for my story. Like, I wanted to keep the story the way I envisioned it, and while an editor gives suggestions, they do not force you to make those suggestions. That is a big thing to know. Editors are not like publishers and say what you can and cannot do. They give suggestions for your manga, for your manuscript. And if you're curious about my experience with an editor, I will leave a link down below or in the cards where you can go check out my awesome experience I had. So that was a very important thing to me personally, that I have absolute control. Yes, the con or the downside is I am the one who's basically funding my manga. I don't have a publisher who has all of these funds to back my story, my manga, and do this marketing for me with these big finances. That is a really hard part of self-publishing, and I will talk more in depth about that in future videos of how much I have paid and paying for my manga so far for its production, because we know that producing manga, it may be cheap to write, but it is not cheap to get it produced with an illustrator, especially because we definitely know that it's not cheap to hire an illustrator and whatnot. Those were two very important things to me, and I feel like because of the writing communities that I have been involved in and invested in for multiple years now, I think I've been part of the writing community for at least 5 years, and that is just as a writer alone. There were just so many people who have been so supportive, and it didn't even make me like blink an eye of like self-publishing. So when the time came and I was wanting to publish my manga, I really didn't think it was odd to even think about self-publishing. Like, I had self-published Dear Author and Team Lines. Team Lines is available only on my website though, since it's like mainly sort of like fan fiction poetry. But what I knew when I published Dear Author that I wanted to do self-publish, I knew that I had a distinct vision that I wanted for this book, and again, I want nobody telling me what I could and could not do for this. And I had also seen a lot of my friends self-publish and have a lot of success. I don't know if they brought back their money that they spent, so to speak, but I knew that they were happy with the choice that they had made. I knew that they were happy just with the success they had gained with the audience, with their audience, and how their audience responded. And just seeing those positive factors really inspired me to want to do the same thing, because it's a very fun and surreal experience to know that you are leading everything as the ultimate leader of your book. Like, you're not just the writer, but you're the writer, the marketer, the promoter. You're the one that's putting all of this together. And I feel like it can be a really hard process for sure, but it can be very rewarding just to know like, hey, like you did this. You did this. And of course you're having friends who are helping you, and maybe other manga creators and manga writers and family that are supporting you. And those play a really big role, because if you decide to self-publish, you need that support. And I'm thankful that my husband was very supportive, not just of me writing and then self-publishing, but financially he was on board with this and helping me and pushing me and encouraging me to follow this route, so that nobody could come in and be like, you can't write Christian manga, like we don't publish this, what are you doing? Because it's not a thing, and I want it to be a thing. I only have one book that is a Christian manga, and that is Shelter of Wings, which I actually have not read yet, but the artwork is absolutely stunning. It is an incredible manga, and I need to really read this. And this is also self-published, and there might be a thing, well, like if your manga is self-published, it's going to look less. And no, as somebody who is spending a lot of money to hire someone who's very professional, no, that's just not true. And I will leave some of the recent artwork that my illustrator has sent me. It is top-notch. I have been told that the style is right up there with Japanese manga creators. So this isn't like something like stick figures, which honestly would have been the thing that I would have done if I was illustrating my manga. But I hired someone. That's why we're doing this series, to help spotlight and share my process. But yes, this is a self-published manga. And as you guys can see, the artwork is just so top-notch. I mean, you can tell she worked really, really hard on this and just did a phenomenal job. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. So even if there might be a stigma towards indie authors or self-published authors or even self-published mangaka, they work really, really hard at what they do. And I hope that this series testifies and shows the results that, hey, I'm not just throwing up some random not pretty drawings on Amazon hoping to make money from this. No, it goes so much more deeper, and I'm taking this whole process very, very seriously because I want people to see Gathering Faith and be like, wow, this looks just like a traditionally published manga. So that, my friends, is pretty much my personal story of why I chose to self-publish my manga Gathering Faith this spring. I'm really, really excited, and I just hope that you found my reasonings helpful, especially if you're on the fence of what you personally want to do concerning publishing your manga. It is a big thing, it's an important thing, and it's definitely meant to be celebrated. So stay encouraged, be encouraged, and keep writing your manga. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and thanks so much for watching. Bye!